Hi, my name is Brian Johnson, and I'm the pastor, one of the pastors of Williamsburg United Methodist Church, and we are trying something a little bit different. We have decided to try to put out some midweek videos as an opportunity to connect with you, not just on Sunday morning, not just with the worship we offer, but also to offer an opportunity to grow in faith during the week. For folks who aren't able to participate in Bible studies or other things, this is a chance to reflect about what's going on in the world, about faith, about life. It is a chance to hopefully have something that will offer a little bit of perspective, that'll offer a little bit of a chance to reflect. It's also a chance for me to show up on camera on your phone while you're scrolling. So today we are talking about I thought we would start by talking about something that we're already talking about in church right now. We kicked off a new pastor's Bible study that is being taught by me and the other two pastors at church, Deacon Troy and Pastor Madison, where we are looking at the book of Esther. Esther is one of those books of the Bible that we don't tend to talk about a lot. It's also worth noting, it's one of the few books of the Bible, it's one of the few stories in the Bible that centers on women. It's a book that's named after a woman. And it's worth us thinking about what this story has to tell us. And it comes from a really interesting place in history. So the book of Esther claims to be about, well, it is about something that happened around in the Persian Empire when the people of Israel had been, were living under the rule of the Persians. But it was written, we think, several hundred years after that, when the people of Israel were living under the rule of the Greeks. And while their time in the Persian Empire was pretty good for Jewish folks, it was a time when they had lots of freedom, had lots of liberty to worship the gods who they wanted to live. Their time under the Greek Empire was not so good. They were the Greek rulers, particularly a guy named Antiochus Epiphanes, which is a really fancy word that I don't want to have to pronounce again. They were not so friendly. They tried to force the Jews to worship other gods, to worship idols against their commitment, against their faith. And so as they're living in oppression, as they are struggling to survive, they write stories to help them figure out how to survive, but they can't write them about what they want to write them about. They want to write about, hey, these Greeks who are in charge, who have conquered us, are being awful to us. But when you're oppressed, when there are powerful forces working against you, you can't say, hey, these powerful people are bad, because if you say that, you're going to get in trouble, you might get hurt. So instead, they write a story about hundreds of years ago, and they take some characters who are long dead, and they tell a story about a time when the king did harm, about folks who figured out how to survive in the midst of a time when things were not going well for them. The book of Esther is fascinating because it doesn't actually mention God. The word God does not show up in the book of Esther. And yet, if we read it, it seems to be a story about how God shows up in the most unexpected ways, about how normal, faithful actions by regular people or by people who happen to have the access and the opportunity to do something can make a real difference. Esther is a book that suggests that folks who, that we don't have to just yell the word God all the time in order for us to do God's work, but that actually faithful work involves the little steps, the moments where we show up and say, we're going to do what's right even when it's difficult. We're going to do what is good, even if it's unpopular, even if it puts us in a little bit of danger. We're going to try to work for good, to work for justice, to work for love, to offer mercy, to stand up for folks who are in danger. And so it's been a really great opportunity to begin to dig into that, to think about, what must it have been like for the folks who wrote the book of Esther, who were scared, who weren't sure what was coming next, and who were trying to find a way to survive. And to think about what does it mean for us when we step into our world, right? What's interesting about Esther, all these other books of the Bible, not all, many books in the Old Testament, you hear God speak and God says, hey, Elijah, go do this, please. And Elijah says, yes, sir, God, I heard you, I'm going to go do it. Or, no, I don't want to. In Esther, that doesn't happen. And I don't know about you, but my life, I don't tend to hear God announcing with a big booming voice, hey, please go do that. Instead, we get these little hints. We get these moments, we get these feelings when we think, I think I know what the right thing to do is, but maybe I'm scared to do it. Esther is a book that teaches us and models for us what that kind of living means. Esther is a book that invites us to think about how do we live faithfully in a world that is not always friendly to us being faithful? How do we help folks who are struggling in a world where sometimes it feels like the powerful are working against goodness? How do we join in God's work when it's not always obvious what God is calling us to do? Or maybe when it does feel obvious what God is calling us to do, but it feels scary to do it. So I would invite you to think about and study the book of Esther. I would invite you to think about, where is God speaking to you? How might you be called to show up in ordinary ways today? How might God be calling you and setting you up for just this moment where you might be in just the place you need to be to make a difference for someone, to help someone who is in need? So, as you consider that, and as we try some more of these videos coming up, I hope you'll see God present in your everyday life, and I pray that you'll respond to God's grace and love in ways that offer love to others. Peace. Hope you have a great week. See you around.